Hello, Smokin' Joe.
Smokin' Joe, c'est moi.
That's a good nickname.
I like it. One of many.
Oh, do you have other nicknames?
Oh, God, I've been called so many things over the years.
Okay, I've already forgotten them. Did I ask that before?
I don't know. We've now done so many of these episodes that we could well be repeating ourselves.
There's angry listeners screaming at their
You've already done
iPhones right now. Mark, you're an idiot. That wasn't actually the question I was going to ask, actually. But, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, people call me Giuseppe, Joseph, blah, blah, blah. But what's the real question?
The real question, okay, so this could be just an answer, yes, no answer, it's fine. Do you have a writing implement that you especially love? Could be a pen, could be a typewriter, could be
Gee.
I don't know. Just
always such hard questions.
Is that a hard question? I don't think it would be. Okay.
Writing implement.
And I thought this would be a good one for our guests too. So
I guess the writing implement that I probably have loved the most, I haven't actually used or seen in decades because it was the typewriter that my parents got back when I was like 11 or 12. And I can still smell that typewriter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved typing on it. And most of the short stories in my short story collection, Other Times and Places, were written on that typewriter. But it vanished at some point. So, yeah. What about you?
I had a typewriter too when I was a kid. My dad's typewriter, an old Corona. It was electric, and it was just the loudest thing ever. So I was always banished to this room in the basement that had doors that could be closed, because that's where I tapped out my first novel ever when I was 16 or 17. So that was it. But yeah, it disappeared too. I don't know what happened to it.
We'll have to hear more about that novel at some point.
Oh, no, we shall not discuss it. It's one that is, yeah, we'll just let that one sit in wherever the dust is, wherever it is. But, yeah.
All right. Now, I suppose you want to ask our guest the same question.
I would like to ask our guest the same question. Yes. Diane, welcome.
Yeah, Diane Walton, welcome to our podcast, Recreative.
Yeah. So have you had some kind of implement that was a favorite, like a pen or pencil, maybe a red pen? I don't know.
These days, my favorite writing implement is a refillable fountain pen.
Yeah, nice.
I bought it about 5 years ago, and because I was getting tired of buying cartridges and having to replace them all the time. And then this one came with a special reservoir that you could just attach and then dip into your bottle of ink and refill it. And so I've been doing that. I have this really nice bottle of black ink, and it refills, and it's got a lovely nib. So
nice.
I like writing with it. It's comfortable, and it just suits me.
Now, do you compose by writing by hand, or do you use keyboard?
I just dot scribbly notes all over my desk.
Yeah. Now, I've got a follow-up question. Have either of you experimented with so I keyboard, I compose at the keyboard, and I imagine both of you do as well. Have you experimented with dictating? The technology is getting quite a bit better.
I've meant to, especially when I was having some wrist problems a while back, but then the wrist problems kind of cleared up, and I'm like, oh, I guess I don't have to. But I was super curious to see how that would work. What about you, Diane?
No, not in the slightest. The last time I dictated to anybody was probably in 1982, give or take, when I actually did have a job where I had my own stenographer.
Wow.
Took everything in shorthand, and I would dictate letters to her. But no,
wow.
That's the last time.
That is a blast from the past. There's kids listening that don't understand any of those, half the words you just used there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I want to actually hear more about this stenographer. But first, I'm going to explain to our guests who you are.
It's a good idea.
Anybody who may not know. So Diane Walton, one of the founding members of the magazine On Spec, the Canadian magazine of the fantastic, which began, I believe, back in about 1989. And you've always been a driving force for the magazine. And as the world has recently learned, the magazine is kind of coming to an end, at least under its original team and under you. And if it does continue, and we'll talk about that, we'll be in a rather different form. So is there anything you would add to that introduction?
Well, other than the fact that the original team hasn't been the original team for a very long time, um, although Barry Hammond, who was our poetry editor right from the beginning, he only retired about a year and a half ago, so he was with us right up until that time. And but other than that, I'm the only on spec person who's been there since the beginning.
All the way through.
Mhm. Yeah.
And is that correct? 89? That was the beginning?
Pretty much 88,
Yeah.
89. I mean, we started talking about it for quite a while, but then we finally got the first issue at the time. And when everything was ready, well, the stars had to be aligned, and so it worked out.
Regular listeners to this podcast know that we often have our guest pick a particular piece of art. In this case, the art is going to be the magazine On Spec. But first, and we're going to get to that, but first I want to know, why did you have a stenographer?
I was at the time I was working for the government, and I was in what they called the correspondence unit for the Department of Motor Vehicles. And the job didn't last very long. I was pretty crappy at it, so I didn't stay. But, but no, so when somebody wrote a letter to motor vehicles asking a question about their license or whatever the case may be, we had to respond, because that was the deal. Like they never, the letters didn't go into a vacuum. They always got an answer. And so we either responded with not really a form letter as much, but it was basically, we would pick and choose phrases from a menu that would fit. And then sometimes if their problem or their situation was so unique, we could actually dictate a letter and say, okay, dear sir or madam, et cetera, this is what I think you should do. And then that's what the stenographer was for.
Yeah.
Because
okay, Mark.
We didn't have computers, right?
Right.
You had to go type the darn letter.
So Mark, help me gracefully pivot to On Spec now from that.
Well, I guess On Spec started at an age when there still were stenographers. That was a while ago, 89. So people could have still been doing that as a job, though.
Oh, probably,
Yeah. I always wished as a journalist that I'd actually picked up shorthand, because it would have been so much easier than trying to figure out what I was trying to say in my notes later. My scribble.
Does anybody know shorthand anymore?
I bet they do. I bet some people do.
I'm sure some people who learned it way back when probably still remember it. As to whether they're teaching it anywhere, I have no idea.
Oh, I seriously doubt that, because as I said, the technology is getting significantly better. So, you could upload the audio from this podcast and turn it into a transcript that's pretty clean now.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So On Spec, probably you've told this story umpteen times before. Would you mind telling us again? How did it begin?
Began with a small group of people who had taken a creative writing course at the U of A, University of Alberta, and it was taught by Rudy Wiebe. I wasn't in that group. I sort of joined later on, but what had happened was that they would get together for their classes and they would critique each other's work. And then after the course was finished, they thought, well, we like each other. Why don't we stick together and actually keep meeting as a writing circle? And which is, the way a lot of people get started, right, with creative writing groups. And so they would get together and work on each other's stories and help each other. And then somewhere along the way, I picked up, I joined them. It was kind of bizarre because Rick and I, my husband and I, lived an hour out of the city, and he was at university taking geophysics. But he had to do long hours at nighttime in the computer lab. And so I had no place to go, right? I could either sit at the university and wait for him, because we only had one car, or I could, walk the streets. I mean, it just worked out. So I basically, we were very good friends with Marianne Nielsen, who was one of the people in this writing group. So I started staying at her place and have supper there, and then I just hang out for the evening while I was waiting for Rick to come and get me. So on the writing group nights, we thought, well, I might as well join the writing group, since I was also trying to do some writing at the time. And so anyhow, that's a long story. But sooner or later, I think Marianne kind of rubbed off on some of the other people who were not writing science fiction, but it kind of drifted into that. Like they were, sort of writing science fiction and fantasy adjacent stories. And sometimes, and then they would submit send off to Asimov's or the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, somebody in the States, right? And they'd get these really, really nice rejection letters. And the rejection letter from the editor would be something like, well, this is really good, but nobody's going to get it.
Huh.
Our readers just it's not our style. Our readers can't get it. It's too Canadian. It's too,
Wow.
too alien.
Too alien.
So we were getting frustrated, and one evening, while we were sitting around bitching at each other essentially about this kind of a problem, somebody said, well, there's got to be a Canadian magazine. And we looked at each other and went, well, no, there isn't. And there might have been one that started and didn't stick around. Just there isn't right now. And so somebody else, whoever they were, I can't remember, said, well, why don't we start one? And this was in Edmonton, which is not the center of the universe. But nobody said we couldn't do it. And we started sort of checking off all the boxes, right? Okay, we're all editors. We know what we're doing, know what we're talking about. Marianne and I were very much connected with the Canadian science fiction community, if you will, at the time. We'd gone to conventions, we'd met writers, we knew who was out there who was actually doing the writing, and we knew where the audience was. So we had us, we had Gina Snyder, who had her own computer at home, and she was doing newsletters and desktop publishing for a living. She was working from home. And so we knew that she could do the layout. She could do the magazine. We had Tim Hamill, who was living in Edmonton at the time, who's a fabulous science fiction artist, who could A, do our first cover, and B, be our art director going forward. We had Barry Hammond, who was a poet and who could do our poetry editing. We had all of the pieces were coming together.
Yeah.
And then we managed to get some gifts of money to get us started. So we had to print the darn thing and pay the writers, because we were always going to pay writers. That was it. You're never going to not pay your writers. And so the first thing we did through the grapevine and through a lot of letters and phone calls was to ask people that we knew in the community, can you send us something? And lo and behold, we get all of these stories. Hang on, I'm going to grab my copies of the magazine, or what I was looking for over here. I'm glad this is not on video. Okay, and our first issue, which is a really pretty cover, which I'll show you guys anyhow.
Okay.
Was by Tim Hamill. You see it?
Yeah.
And it's a wraparound cover.
Nice.
So we see, can you describe it for those who...
It's essentially masks, a series of different types of very alien-looking masks. There's kind of a lizard creature. There's a humanoid with eyes, nose, and no mouth. Kind of looks very vampire-ish, actually. There's kind of a dinosaur-y type face or a demon type face. There's a robot type face. And then just a couple of other really cool, star type creatures. So Tim did this, and it's all what they called, I think, saddle stitched at the time. So it's basically not like there's no binding on the back. It's just put it together in staple in the middle. But we got a story from Dave Duncan.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
We knew him. H.A. Hargreaves. I don't know if you ever heard of Hank Hargreaves.
I certainly have. I've got a collection of his stories here.
Well, there you go. Okay, so you know what his claim to fame was, right? And he was a professor at the U of A, and we knew him. So we asked him for a story. We got a story from Eileen Kernaghan, who's a writer out on the West Coast. Robert Runte sent us a story. Rhea Rose, who has been writing for a long time, again on the West Coast. Lyle Weiss, who became a very, very good friend. A fellow at the time named Ron Stewart. I've lost touch with Ron for a long time, but he was a friend of ours. Another Edmonton area writer, Alberta writer named Catherine Sinclair. So they all send us these absolutely fabulous stories. And so we published our first issue and got some illustration for the stories. Let's see, now what was this? Like Adrian Kleinberg. And Hargreaves wrote us a beautiful story about playing golf on the moon. And
Okay.
so Adrian did an illustration, which is basically a ginormous golf ball with a picture of an astronaut on the moon landscape.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So
Mark has a story set in the moon, but I don't think there was any golf in it. Was there, Mark?
No, there's no golf.
yeah.
No.
And so we put it together, and what we started off with, because we were feeling kind of green at this, and we thought, okay, do we have the credibility? Us, our little group, do we have the credibility? Yeah, maybe we should get some real names in here. So we asked a number of people to be our first editorial advisory board, which would be the likes of Monica Hughes and Pauline Gedge, Doug Barber, Candace Jane Dorsey, and Jay
Right.
Bryant Clark was our first editorial advisory board.
And
so
did that make a difference?
Not so much. No,
Okay.
they validated what we were doing.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was good for the ego, right?
It's good for the ego. It gave the magazine a bit more, in some ways, at the beginning, credibility.
Yeah.
Right? Until we really had got our chops and we
Right.
knew what was going on. But so essentially, we would pick all the stories, and then the last thing we would do is we would give them to these folks to read, and they would kind of, you did well. Okay, pat you on the
Ah,
head, and
yeah.
that's it, and you're good. So nobody ever said, no, that's crap. You wouldn't, over my dead body, you're not going to publish that story. Nothing like that. No, they just said, yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Well, I mean, it became such a good looking magazine and a well edited magazine that I remember seeing it in my university days, in stores. And I certainly didn't care whether or not there was an advisory board behind it or anything.
Most people wouldn't have, but it made us
Yeah.
feel good.
Yeah. I
and
knew, I just knew I wanted to be in it. But I only ever managed to submit like a couple of times, and I got rejected. And I actually have. I looked through my files.
Joe, don't feel so bad.
Yeah. Well, I looked through my files, and I have 2 rejection letters from you, Diane.
No, and you're still talking to me? Okay.
Well, they were they were personal, which I think is not common. So you wrote me. I mean, there was the form rejection letter, and then you wrote some stuff, which was really appreciated.
Did you have that form rejection letter with like a bunch of boxes and then?
For a while, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
Yeah.
and then people told us that it was very insulting. So we decided.
Well, I don't know. It's better than no feedback at all. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of the time as a writer, you're sending stuff off into a black hole, basically. If you hear back at all, you don't really hear anything. So
We've had good and bad responses.
yeah.
Like the rule is that you really should never ever write back to the magazine that rejected you.
Oh
right?
no, yeah,
No, of course not. No.
Complain, you should never do.
No.
And yet we got the odd complaint. Like this one guy who shall remain nameless wrote and told us we were a bunch of morons for
Oh, wow.
rejecting his beautiful work, and that we were holding back science fiction by 20 years.
Well, you know what? Writers have to be confident. So
Oh, brother.
Oh, yeah.
that maybe it can be too confident.
And then he threatened to self-publish the story. And for about a year after that, I kept checking just to see, and he never showed up anywhere. So it was just, one of those things. But it's a live and learn situation, right? Whether he ever became or sold any of his work anywhere, I have no idea.
Well, okay, so Mark and I are the only 2 writers in Canada not to have been published in On Spec. I got a real kick out of it.
We've established that now, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
when it was announced that the magazine was not continuing in its current form, of course, everybody came out of the woodwork and said, well, I was, I had an editorial, I had a poem, I had a story, whatnot. And I'm like, well, I've got a rejection letter. But I'm just honored to have the longstanding editor and one of the co-founders on our podcast. So I think that counts for something.
Sure it does.
Yeah. So you had
Later
mentioned...
we'll probably meet in person and hopefully have dinner at Gary and Wendy's place or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, actually we should mention, a good friend of mine, Gary Swindon, who I worked with at the CBC, he's
He's my cousin.
He's your cousin. Yes, right. Yeah. And we often see Gary and his wife, Wendy.
Okay, wait,
and,
guys, we got to stop this. Our non-Canadian listeners are just going to take the wrong idea from this. Yeah, everyone in Canada knows one another. No, they're related.
Well, this is true.
It's a small country.
It's not that small a country, people. It's okay.
And if truth be known, I mean, I'm an only child, right? I grew up with no siblings. And so Gary and his three brothers are basically the closest to brothers that I've ever had. And so I figured that. And Wendy's my sister.
Well, great people. Yeah. And I did meet you actually long before I knew that connection. We actually sat at a table together. You probably don't remember. At a convention, we manned an SF Canada table together for a while. I can't even remember what convention it was, but yeah. But I knew you were a nice person then, and I knew there was so when it came time to invite you to our podcast, I knew that.
So I have a question about starting a magazine. When you did is an interesting time to start a magazine. You mentioned that you had one of the people had access to layout software.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a time period when like the do-it-yourself thing was much more possible to do because of that. So what happened once the internet came around? Did that make your life even easier or harder?
It was a long time before we stopped asking for print stories.
Right.
For a number of years, we basically pick up the mail, pick up the manuscripts, open them up, record them, and do everything, manually, and then distribute them amongst the editors so that everybody could read the manuscript. And so, everybody reads batch 1, which is 10 stories, hands it off to the next person, the next person, the next person, and so forth. Sometime along the way, we realized that other magazines were taking submissions through email, electronically. And I was talked into this, I won't say by whom, but to say, yeah, okay, we have to open to electronic submissions. We got 800 stories.
Oh, wow.
And compared to what you would normally get, what would you normally get?
30 a month.
Oh, my God. Oh, my
Wow.
Lord. I imagine what's happening to editors right now with AI.
Yeah.
They're getting all this slop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, it was coming from all over the world, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so we finally figured out that we could organize or, restrict the numbers that were coming in, or at least the timelines. So we would say, hey, we're only open from here to here.
Right.
This is it. This is all you get. And then that kind of controlled things a little bit better. And then we found the software or the applications, the plugins that we could use to keep track of the stories and do all of that. This has been a long time coming, like over the years. But I found this really cool WordPress plugin to help me to just sort things out and be able to assign stories to the editors to read and find out what their status was, and have pre-written rejection letters and pre-written acceptance letters and all of this stuff already computerized.
Right.
And so that made life a lot easier. But the first time around, it was just terrifying.
Yeah, it's funny. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking about how much more you could do in terms of reaching an audience, having the internet available to you. I was thinking of the marketing side of it. That never really happened, eh? No,
that never really happened. I mean,
that's a shame.
even now, I think more people go to our website because they're looking for a market.
Right.
They're looking for something to read. And I think that was probably the big drawback. I think that's why I could never quit my day job. We just never had that many people subscribing, that many people reading. The people who read it enjoyed it. They talked about it. They spread the word in their own little circles. But it wasn't as huge an audience as you would think. I mean, even now, since I joined Blue Sky last year, and we suddenly had something like 3,000 followers on Blue Sky. How many of those people have ever bought a copy? Maybe a handful.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that must be the case with a lot of magazines. That it's people are looking for a market as opposed to something to read. That's wow. Yeah.
And others do it their own way. Like sometimes if they offer the magazine for free, they'll get a lot of downloads. They'll get a lot of readers. Mm-hmm. And but we've always charged for it. And so yeah. I mean, you do what you have to, but it's different for everybody, and everybody has a different marketing strategy. And it got to the point where I was just too tired to really come up with anything new and wonderful. The old way is the best way as far as we were concerned. And it kind of, you market by word of mouth. You meet people at conventions face to face, and that's how we made a lot of our sales.
But I think it was extremely well known, wasn't it? And it was carried in a lot of stores. I remember seeing it on shelves.
I got an email today saying, "I've lived in Victoria for 20 years and I've never heard of you." I'm going,
really?
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah.
Huh.
But whose fault is that? It's nobody's fault in a way. Like, he obviously didn't Google Canadian science fiction magazines at any time in his life. That would be one of the things that comes up. And we didn't actually have the money to put an ad in the Victoria area media, so it's just, you don't know what media these people are expecting you to show up on. Like, where, in fact, a guy came up to me at an event, this was years ago, but he said, "I've never heard of you." And I said, "Where would you expect to have heard of us?" And he looked at me blankly like, "Oh, I didn't get that part." Because that's the thing. Where would you expect to hear about this tiny little Edmonton magazine, except when they close after 35 years? And then suddenly everybody talks about it.
I find it very surprising because, and maybe Mark and I are unique, but, and I'm sure you did the same, Mark, that we kind of made it our business to find out what was out there, like I know
people don't
several of the, like Neopsis magazine, Challenging Destiny, Horizons of SF, all these. Yeah.
Parsec. Yeah. There's
a lot of people wait to be spoon fed. It's just the way it happens. They in fact, I was really mean. The fellow that wrote and said, "I'd never heard of you and I live in Victoria." I asked him, "Have you ever heard of Neopsis?" So I don't know whether he's going to reply or not. He might be too embarrassed. But, again, they probably do a lot of their local promotion. I don't know. I don't follow it that much.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own way of doing things.
Now, okay, so it lasted an awful long time, really. Mm-hmm. To what do you attribute its longevity? Like, how were you guys able to keep it going?
Money. The Alberta Cultural Industries branch, the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, the Cultural Industries, has pretty much always been very good at providing money for local cultural products. Theater, dance, art, publishing. The book publishing industry in Alberta thrives. The magazine publishing industry in Alberta thrives. And for the longest time, we were pretty much the only speculative fiction magazine that was applying for grants.
Right.
So you're kind of in your own little niche.
Yeah.
And so they pretty much always provided us with sufficient funding that we knew that we could pay our writers and pay the printer.
Right.
And get the copies out. And so that was a big thing for us, because we couldn't charge our readers the real cost of the magazine, physical publication. Because, like, you print 500 copies, you maybe sell half of them. Maybe a bit more than half, if you're lucky. So the rest of them are just in boxes in my house. I'm surrounded by old back issues of On Spec, and the ones that aren't here are at the comic book store in Edmonton, where we keep a lot of our inventory. You don't sell every single thing you print, so you can't make up that money. So the funding from the government to subsidize the arts in Canada was an essential thing.
Yeah, that must be just challenging to have copies sitting around. I think my first novel, I bought 2 boxes from the publisher because it was expensive to get across the border. I had an American publisher for my first novel. And I think I've finally now sold them all. But that's like 20 years.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. We've unloaded free copies, like to conventions, like the CanCon in Ottawa last year. I sent them a box of copies that they could give to everybody that came to CanCon for free.
Yeah,
Things
that's
like
nice.
that. So I told Brandon at the comic book store in Edmonton, I said, look, just give away the copies of On Spec that you have, and tell people that they can donate to the local cat rescue.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I'm going to do with the copies I have here. Just to make sure that the money, somebody is reading them, and the money is going someplace good.
It goes somewhere
We're
good.
still selling digital copies online. Those will always be available. And Waitlist Books has about 15 years worth, I think, if not more. Possibly even 20 years worth.
Well, that's okay. So that's a great time to ask you what I'm interested in a little bit is like, what are some of the stories that you've published that you're just most proud of publishing? I mean, I know that's a really hard question to ask an editor.
I made a list,
but you got to have a few that just like, you know what? I don't think anyone else would have published that, and it's such an amazing story that you're proud of it.
You guys know the writer James Allen Gardner?
Yes.
Okay.
I love his work. Yeah.
All right. I'm sure it wasn't his first story, but he sent us a story, early years of publishing, and I wanted it desperately. The other editors were kind of lukewarm on it. And a few years later, like, he won the Aurora Award for the story, for one thing. I met him at a convention, and he told me at that point in time that the story had probably made him more money in reprints than most of his novels that he'd had published up to that date.
Wow.
So just one little story, but stories have legs, right? They can keep going. The title of the story almost was what sold it to me in the first place. It's called Muffin Explains Teleology to the World at Large.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Teleology, definition-wise, is the explanation of something by referring to its purpose, goal, or end. And the concept of teleology in this particular story was that there's this little girl, 6-year-old girl named Muffin, very precocious child, who knows when the world is going to end.
Yeah.
And it's not one of those huge apocalyptic things. She says it's just going to come to a stop because we've gotten to where we need to be. And that's how the story comes to an end, right? Except that in her case, it starts up again because she and her brother are the only ones that are still surviving at the end of it. And I think they're eating bologna sandwiches or something at the end. I can't remember which ones, but maybe peanut butter. But no, and I mean, she's an adorable child. She doesn't talk like a 2-foot high adult. She talks like a kid, right? And all of the story is leading up to is the fact that she has said, look, things are going to stop like Thursday. and her mother, of course, says, oh, that's nice, dear. That's nice, dear. The only person that actually believes her is her uncle. And he just says, I think you know what you're doing. Like, you're a smart child, and I think you really know what's happening here. And there's this beautiful scene where she's telling her uncle where she thinks he should be at the last minute. And it's like, she says something like, you should be walking on a beach somewhere. Just enjoy the waves and enjoy everything around you. And he says, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I was in tears. First time I read that, I went, oh, geez.
Wow.
And, but it's a beautiful story, and it's so peaceful and so happy and so funny in places that, it's always stuck with me. And, like I said, he's reprinted the story a number of times.
I wonder if that inspired Don McKellar. Last Night, I think, was the name of the movie.
Yeah, I never saw that. I've heard of it so many times.
Because it had that kind of beautiful sense of the ending. Yeah, it was. People were just trying to figure out where they want to be when it all ends quietly.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're talking about when it's alien to an American audience? Is that the kind of story that maybe just wouldn't go over?
Perhaps
with an American magazine?
Because in those days, like with especially with analog and the hard science fiction magazines and stuff, they were looking for hero saves the day stories. Right? They were looking, and then Harlan Ellison came along and kind of blew everything out of the water, right? But there was a time when those kinds of stories weren't quite ready to meet the audience yet. And so, and we were a little bit ahead of the curve in some cases, I think. But, there was a story later on called Carpe Diem. Again, I think it might have been Eileen Kernaghan. I can't remember the writer now, that's sad. But it was about a bunch of people in a senior's home. And it was in a situation where you could tell that society had devolved, or through to a certain point where you were confined to this senior's home and you were told you have to live right. You have to take care of yourself. You have to eat well. You have to follow all the rules, because if you don't, we're probably going to have you taken care of. Like,
euthanized. Goodness.
And one of the women essentially says, screw this. And she goes out bar hopping one night and just has the best time in her life. And of course, the next day, the inevitable happens, but she's had that carpe diem moment. She lived the life and she left the way she wanted to. And that was the story. And of course, how many magazines at the time, and especially in the States, would have bought a story like that? I don't know.
That's true. Actually, and there's interesting parallels with that story with your novel, The Fatness Mark. Just to throw that in there. Robert Rente, who you referenced earlier, has spoken and written about the difference between American fiction and Canadian fiction. And I think a part of it was what you said, that the Americans have to have a hero, but Canadian fiction doesn't have to save the day.
Yeah, we had more anti-heroes, I think. We had more not so much doom and gloom, but let's face it, a lot of Canadian writing over the years has always been influenced by the dark and stormy winters, and just that whole attitude, just the way we are and what we're affected by.
Wow. Do you think there is that geographical component as opposed to just the makeup of our
I think
citizenry?
so, even if it's just metaphorical. Even if the story didn't have to necessarily be set in the dead of winter, in the middle of the prairies, but it just sometimes it just feels that way.
Did you guys ever have any long knockdown, drag out arguments about what story should or should not be included?
Frequently.
Oh, really? Okay.
The joke amongst the editors, the process that we used to do is we would get approximately 40 stories, right? And Kath Jackal, who was our business manager at the time, would separate the stories into batches of 10. And then each editor would read the batch, hand it off to the next editor, hand it off to the next, and so on and so forth. And we were all keeping scores. The score was basically, if it was a 1, it was, yes, I would take this story in a heartbeat and I will fight to the death for it, down to a 5, which is over my dead body. The 3 being meh. Right?
Oh, the worst place to be, a 3.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
At least 5, you've got some kind of emotion out of the reader.
Yeah, exactly. The 2 was, this story's almost there, but maybe if they rewrite it, we can give them some suggestions and say, hey, rewrite, no promises. So that was our way of doing things. So we would get together on a particular night with wine, had to be wine, and have our fight night. And that's what we called it.
A fight night.
And we would go through all of the 5s and the 4s and go, okay, no. And then somebody would go, well, no, I kind of like that one. And then we would have to come back and talk about it and then make a decision. If a person could fight enough for a particular story, even if the rest of us were going, yay, it usually got bought, because we knew that in a sampling of our reading audience, enough people in that reading audience sample would be that editor, would be that person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is cool. So, and actually I think that's how Muffin got in the door too, because the other editors at the time didn't think it was all that good.
Really?
So,
wow.
Who knows, right? But, and there were stories that I lost the fight on over the years that there was one story, I wish I could remember it now, but all I remember is that I was so unhappy that it just didn't get picked, and I couldn't fight hard enough for it. I mean, obviously I should have, but it just didn't work that way.
But then eventually there were other, as we mentioned, magazines in the Canadian landscape that that perhaps those stories went on to. I know that the stories that you guys rejected of mine did eventually get published by the other magazines like Challenging Destiny, Horizons SF, and so on.
And it's essentially because our taste was different, right?
Yeah.
And it suited us, or it didn't suit us, suited somebody else. And so there's never anything that says, well, I mean, we did reject some really bad stories, but presumably those things never saw the light of day anyhow. But we did get letters from writers saying, hey, you rejected my story, but you gave me some really good comments.
Yeah.
And I used those comments and I rewrote it and I've sold it to so-and-so. And so, it happens.
Now, did you favor Canadian stories, or did it matter where the stories came from?
We desperately wanted to favor Canadian stories. Now, the problem with that is that when we opened up to the stories submitted through the net, we were starting to get some really fine stories from other countries.
Right.
And so that, we kind of slipped at that point. So that there were some times when we just weren't, filling up as many Canadian stories as we should have in the particular issues.
Did you have your own personal CanCon regulation where there had to be at least a certain...
We had to be 80%. Yeah.
Well, I think you could argue that they're Canadian stories if they're being published in your magazine. I mean, you've got a specific sort of Canadian aesthetic, so it's sort of Canadian.
It had to be Canadian authored.
Yeah.
I mean, Canada Council...
that probably matters there, yeah.
Getting funding from them, we literally had to send them a copy of each of the issues of the magazines with C for Canadian written on the pages. So you have a 10-page story, it got C, 10 times. And then an American story got F for foreign. And then, and the Canadian had to be 80% of the editorial content. And which was stupid in a way, because we could publish like a 1,000-word story by a Canadian, or a 5,000-word story by a Canadian, or like that. I gave those the same weight, but by page count it didn't.
Oh, really?
I'm really careful about that. Yeah. But they were that picky. I mean, it was the bean counters that were looking at this.
They are trying to promote Canadian artists, so it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit weird.
And even then, when we bought the stories for a year's worth of issues, then we had to figure out, pick and choose, what goes into which issue, and that's always been fun. And try to decide.
And so what was that evening called? The bloodletting?
Almost, yeah.
Now, okay, so you stuck with it the whole time. Was there ever a point at which you were tempted yourself to give it up, or?
This year. Yeah.
This was the first time?
I basically, when we moved here from Edmonton and I retired and I knew I had more time to work on it, I said, okay, I'll give it a year or two. Then I'd been telling myself for the last, 5 or 6 years, I said, I'll stop when it's not fun anymore. And this year, it just wasn't fun. It was leading up to that. And I thought, okay, I don't want to be, going through the grind of applying for grants and doing all that stuff, and then chasing after my editors to get something done, and this, that, and the other thing. And then it wasn't an adventure for me like it was before. I enjoyed it, but not as much.
And so it wasn't that there was something that changed. It just had become...
Well, I got old.
Like old. You got... No. Now that I've recently turned 60, I've decided nobody's allowed to call themselves old until they're 100.
Oh, okay. That's fair enough then. That gives me 20, or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
I know. Somebody on Facebook was talking about their 96-year-old mother acting like a teenager or something. I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I'm going to do in 25 years. It'll be like that. Yeah.
So it's not that you got old, but it got old.
Yeah.
So
You see the other magazines around you and you think, look how much energy they have. Look how much just new stuff that they're doing. I mean, like pulp literature. Okay, they're publishing books. They're publishing the magazine. They're running little convention events or online stuff. They're doing all these things. And Augur magazine, the same thing. They're doing a convention. And I just did not have the energy, and there was nobody else on the team that wanted to take on these kinds of projects.
right.
So why try and copy other people if they're doing it really, really well? We were just kind of, same old, same old. And as much as the stories were still really good, we didn't, skimp on that. Like, we were very cautious about what we picked. But the other stuff that we were doing, social media marketing and that kind of thing, we just couldn't.
But okay, so it is ending in this form, but it appears that it has been taken up by Shadowpaw Press, Edward Willett, back on the other side of the country. And so tell us about that. What is happening there? How is it going to live on?
Ed is going to do a Kickstarter campaign, essentially to be able to publish an anthology, a one-shot deal, just to see how it plays out. And if he can A, get the money, and B, get the stories, and put the book together, then see if it sells. If everything, like all the stars are aligned, then there would be another one. If not, we tried. It's just, but he's using, with our blessing, because On Spec is actually owned, if you will, by the Copper Pig Writers Society, which is a not-for-profit society in Alberta. That's always been the way we did this. And so the Copper Pig, of which I am president for life, basically offered the name On Spec if it's enough to sell something. If people will see that and go, oh yeah, there's something there that's still, something they remember, or whatever the case may be. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it gives it a name, it gives it a brand.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
And I'll be probably reading slush and, doing some of the helping out with the editing and that kind of thing, because by
so you'll stay involved.
So you're not out completely then.
No, I won't be as tired as I was this year.
I keep trying to get out and they keep pulling me back.
Pull me back in.
Well, it'll be fun. That's the thing. It'll be fun again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that somebody else is paying the bills. Somebody else is managing the printing and the editing and the layout and all of that stuff that I don't have to worry about.
But now you recently were awarded was it a Lifetime Achievement Award from
it's called Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame. Okay. Yeah. For your work, which is I think everybody in the country that has anything to do with the industry and any awareness of it would believe that this is extremely well deserved. So congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
I was really chuffed. I was very happy. Like Barb Galler Smith, who's one of my editors, she nominated me for it last year. And then the committee basically, they had to weigh out all the different nominations that they had sitting on their desk, and they picked some other people. And then this year I was one of the lucky people that got it. So it was good timing in a way. Like, it just made me feel good. And I've got this lovely plaque on my living room wall.
And sorry, what organization was that? I missed that.
That's the Canadian Science Fiction and Fantasy Association.
Okay, good.
They do the Aurora Awards.
Yeah.
It must feel special to you, to have contributed in this way to the Canadian science fiction and fantasy landscape. And how do you feel about it?
I like the idea. I mean, it's an ego thing, right? I mean, it makes me feel very happy to know that there are copies of On Spec in the Merrill collection in Toronto. There's copies of On Spec in the National Library in Ottawa, or Hull, wherever the heck it is. There's a copy of every issue in the Alberta Provincial Archives, which I sent them last year before we left Alberta. There's actually even a couple of universities, there's a university in California that has always subscribed to On Spec. And and there's one in Germany which always got on spec too, which really amazed me. They're around, they're out in the world, they're in people's private collections. Some people don't throw them away, some people just keep them, and it just gives me a really warm fuzzy feeling, I guess, just knowing that they're out there. And it means that your name is out there. Sure, like maybe somebody will do their master's thesis about On Spec in 10 years while I'm still alive and breathing to talk to them about it. I don't know. It's really.
Have there been any anthologies of some of your favorite stories, or would there ever be?
Well, several of these stories have actually shown up in other anthologies. Yeah.
Sure. But none about, like, no On Spec collections.
Well, yeah, there's two.
Okay.
Yeah, there's On Spec the first 5 years, which we did with originally Tesseract Books, which was the Books Collective, which used to be Candace Dorsey's.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can now buy these through Edge. They're still available. You can buy them through Edge Publishing in Calgary. Right. So this was On Spec the first 5 years, when we thought, we've made it to 5 years. And so again, we picked our favorite stories from the first 5 years of the magazine. And now that's where Carpe Diem ends up too. Yeah. And Muffin was in here.
Oh, that's awesome. There you go.
Okay.
People can buy that. We can flog that
there's
on the
story
website.
By Carl Schrader.
Oh, yeah.
Jason Kopalka, Wesley Herbert, Eileen Kernaghan, Daryl Murphy, Sally
I think
McBride,
I'm going to have to pick that up.
Keith Scott, Robert Boychuk, Hugh Spencer, Alice Major has a lovely poem in here called Mrs. Leakey's Ghost. I've always loved that. Yeah. So this was like to celebrate that we'd actually made it for 5 years. And then when we got to 25 years, Tyche Books in Calgary did an editor's favorite issue of the ensuing, after the first 5 years, what was the next 20 years. Oh. And this is all the editor's favorite stories that we each had a hand in picking to go in.
Those two books strike me as must-haves, I think, for any
serious science fiction
and
collector in Canada.
Tyche still sends us royalties for sales on this one, so they're obviously buying it.
Yeah.
And you can buy it in, paper or digital. So
we can put those on the website.
And will.
Yes.
Okay, so as we wrap up, what is next for you then?
For me, I'm learning to enjoy being retired. And it would be nice not to have to get up in the morning and immediately sit down at my computer. It'll be nice to get up, enjoy my coffee, maybe go for a walk. Well, I should go for walks more often anyhow. And I'm looking at, the possibility of like hobbies. I took a watercolor painting class a few months back, and I thought, gee, maybe I could do something like that. I'm useless at art. I mean, I've been terrible, but I thought, why not give it a shot, right? And then I went to one of those paint nights last month, and we did a Maud Lewis cat. Black cat.
That's great. Yeah.
From her house. Maud Lewis was like near us, not too far from where we live, and so she's local. She's our baby. She's our person. Right?
Yeah. Are you familiar with Maud Lewis, Mark?
I have seen her paintings 100%.
Yeah.
We got prints all over this house.
Yeah, I've 100% seen her paintings.
Yeah.
Her actual house is in the museum in Halifax, or in the art gallery, one of the two buildings in Halifax. It was taken apart and moved and reconstructed in the museum. There is a steel, sort of a shape of the house, like a replica, not a replica. It's just a steel structure where her house was that you can visit. And you can kind of walk inside and go, geez, this was small. And but in the location where the house was. And there's a man who lives, I think, on the Digby Neck, who built his own replica of the Maud Lewis house.
Wow.
And people can come and visit and see it and tour it. And he copied all of the paintings, all the stuff, anything that was on the walls and everything. He made copies of it. And so anyhow, I did this paint night. So I've got this beautiful, fake Maud Lewis picture in my bathroom. And I thought, okay, okay, why
that
not?
you made. So that's
That
good.
I
Yeah.
made, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm now singing with two different choirs, one French, one English. And I'm also with a group of women locally, a group of Acadian women who we get together for fun every couple of weeks and just jam, which is, fun. But then come January, we'll start putting together a show to put on during the Acadian Festival next August.
Oh, wow.
So we'll be practicing, every week, every 2 weeks for that until the show.
So you speak and singing in French?
I can sing in French. My French leaves a lot to be desired. But I'm surrounded by French-speaking people, right? And so most of the time, they're not speaking English, and I just pick up enough as far as I go. But everybody here is fluently bilingual, and so it doesn't really matter. I mean, the French choir, there's a couple of other Anglophones in the choir besides myself, and so the director speaks both French and English when she's practicing with us. But
so you have lots to do post On Spec.
Oh gosh, yeah, I have thousands of books to read. I mean, there's so much reading for pleasure that I haven't been able to do.
Right.
The time factor, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so now I can actually get more books out of our stash that we've been buying for years that I just never had time to read. Get more books out of the library, and just enjoy just the quiet and the peace and the no deadlines. And that'll be fun.
Oh, I can just feel the relief. No deadlines. No deadlines.
Exactly.
Mark, any final thoughts or questions?
I just think it's wonderful. You're painting and singing. That's just, whatever Kurt Vonnegut says about making your soul grow. It's art. Art at any form is great.
Mm-hmm. And I might try some, needlepoint or rug hooking or something as I get.
It's all great. Yeah,
just stuff like that. Anything that I feel that I haven't tried, give it a shot.
Diane Walton, thank you very much for being on our podcast, Recreative.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
You've been listening to Recreative, a podcast about creativity and the works that inspire it. Recreative is produced by Mark Rayner and Joe Mahoney for Donovan Street Press Inc. in association with Monkey Joy Press. Technical production and music by Joe Mahoney, web design by Mark Rayner. You can support this podcast by checking out our guests' work, listening to their music, purchasing their books, watching their shows, and so on. You can find out more about each guest and all of our past episodes by visiting recreative.ca. That's re-creative.ca. You can contact us by emailing Joe Mahoney at donovanstreetpress.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.